Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me and allowing me to continue to be your daily advocate. If you're new here or you're not subscribed for any reason, please do me a huge favor and hit the subscribe button. Thank you to all of you who have been watching and following me for so long. It truly means a lot, and I'm glad that I can be this person.
This is from June 14th, 2018, the day of the Bill Hinman speech, and this guy nails it. Talking about hitting a grand slam in the bottom of the ninth in the World Series with 2 outs to win the game. This is that. The greatest downside of today's, and I wouldn't call it a downside, I would call it what it was the plan. The greatest downside of today's SEC statement on Ethereum is that it will lock Ethereum in its as a dominant platform because better protocols won't be able to get the vaunted decentralized status before the regulators notice them. This is the future we are supposed to be fighting. Also, since this is getting some traction, consider reading my analysis. Anyway, this is what I want you to focus on. And Joseph Lubin, see, this is where I really locked onto this. When I was watching Joseph Lubin speaking and started looking into him, this is what he was dancing around with all his word game. But he said it outright a couple of times. He said something to the effect, well, it's going to be difficult for these protocols that come along now because it's kind of hard to get yourself to the point where you're decentralized. And then Nancy Wotas, you remember, the attorney from Cooley, she and the Wendy Moore attorney from Perkins Coie both were sitting on stage, and they said basically, yeah, so now we're in an industry where Ethereum is decentralized because Bill Hinman said so, and now everything else is out here in this purgatory, which is what Brad Garlinghouse was at the SEC complaining about. It was done intentionally. This was the plan, folks. Okay? And now we're starting to find out who's really behind the plan. Okay? I said this was the plan, nailed it, bingo, direct hit, on the money. Alright, now, TAIG is back from vacation. That is unfortunate for many of the people who were behind all of this because he's on the job and he's finding things that nobody could find about what's going on. And I said Ethereum 2.0, I retweeted his tweet, I said Ethereum 2.0 was changed to consensus layer. Why not just call it the JP Morgan layer? And he's got this, here's the patent JP Morgan filed in 2013. I'll say it again, Ethereum is JP Morgan and JP Morgan is Ethereum. Link, method and system for processing internet payments using the electronic funds transfer network. And this is their patent, okay? Now, so what I've decided to do, because I've shown, you know, and in the last 3 years, especially in the bear market, I was trying to explain to my audience the bigger picture of what was going on. This is when the market was down. This is when every day we would have a Jamie Dimon come out. And make no mistake, folks, this was all by design. This was intentional. All of these powerful people, they were coming out and saying negative things about crypto, negative things about Bitcoin. They were coming out and they were, if you remember, there was a Glenn Beck video where he had Tika Tiwari on, and Tika Tiwari actually went through the timeline. He said, here's where they're going out and they're bashing this stuff, and then here's where they're behind the scenes buying it, whether it was George Soros or JP Morgan, and they're buying it while they're driving the market down and all of this stuff. Okay, so, but the point is that there's been a lot more going on here. What all of this is about is Federal Reserve 2.0, whatever you want to call it, Bretton Woods 2.0, Federal Reserve. They're taking us into the gig is up on the current financial system, and so now they're all coming to the table. Now that our politicians and bureaucrats and everything have ruined our money and put our country in debts that cannot be gotten out of, now they're going to just, instead of accepting any responsibility or anything crazy like that, they're going to create a new system, and we're going to roll into this digital system. But they've got they're working the same playbook that's been worked for centuries by the wealthy, and so let's show you. All right, what you're about to watch, they're talking about how the Federal Reserve was formed. And I said right here, the Federal Reserve, which was a monopoly on money, you can call it whatever you want, Federal Reserve was a monopoly on money created by the 5 wealthiest families in the world. I think it was 5 or 6. The Federal Reserve, which was a monopoly on money, was planned at Jekyll Island, Georgia in 1910 by representatives of J.P. Morgan and other wealthy families like Rockefeller. They had their representatives, that kind of thing. It's not a coincidence that we are now finding out Ethereum, the free pass was just a part of it. Calling Ethereum a commodity and getting Bitcoin and Ethereum out from under securities laws, which is what Lowell Ness said they were trying to do, getting it from those two, and those two alone, out from under securities laws. The Ethereum side of that was so that there was right now, have a monopoly on token issuance. Remember, Joseph Lubin is the only guy that was running around bragging about, oh yeah, we're issuing this token, all that. And now, remember, now Consensus is in a lawsuit, and they're saying that there was the people that are suing are the Consensus shareholders, and they're basically saying that in one way or another, he turned over control to J.P. Morgan of that company, is the way I read it. Now, it's not a coincidence that we're now finding out Ethereum, which is about token issuance and a DeFi monopoly. Have you seen Gary Gensler go after any Ethereum-based DeFi? He said that DeFi is a no-no, but have you seen him go after any of the Ethereum-based DeFi? Rosalind Layton, in one of her Forbes articles, brought this to the attention of everyone. Okay, so right now, as I sit here today, the only people that are the only platform where token issuance and DeFi is okay, from what I can tell, is on the Ethereum platform. It was all by design. Now, watch this video about how the Federal Reserve was formed.
And so what happened at the time was the commonality actually of J.P. Morgan was with Aldrich, and Aldrich's son actually, who was a New York banker at the time, but who wasn't involved in the 6 people. He just happened to have been a New York banker. He became, Winthrop Aldrich became the head of Chase for decades, but at that time he was not. But the point is there was that relationship, and it was Morgan that actually just had the pass. He wasn't there, he wasn't involved, he was not physically at all at Jekyll Island at that time that the origins of the Fed were being discussed, but he was the name on the book that was associated with these individuals. And so that's kind of how it came down. They would otherwise not have been able to just get physical access onto the property. And it's like any now, elite club thing. It's like you invite people in or they can't come in.
You're talking about 6 men apparently that controlled a quarter of the wealth of the world. That's the data that you hear about. So it's you read about it, but again, so a lot of people said it was a spoof about what the author wrote about him, and he said a lot of other things, but it's a story that picked up a lot of attention on how the world wealth is controlled by a handful of people. How much do you buy into that?
Well, so these 6 people weren't necessarily all those people. What happened was, like, Frank Vanderlip, who was one of the people, was a sort of VP at National City Bank, which is now Citigroup. So, I mean, there are different people that were involved in the major banks at the time. So yes, there was an awful lot of money represented at that meeting, and Nelson Aldrich was the head of what we now consider the Senate Finance Committee. And so he was a very established senator, and he had been going back and forth to Europe around this time anyway to collect information.
All right, so first there's that, and then let's watch this and see it with what's going on right now. Tell me if any of this sounds familiar. This is, I'm drawing a blank on his name, but this is the guy that wrote the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island. Tell me if any of this sounds familiar with what's going on right now in crypto.
And the reason for the Jekyll Island connection is because one of the most interesting things about the Federal Reserve is that it was created on Jekyll Island. It's a real island. It's off the coast of Georgia. And it was on that island back in 1910 that a small group of men gathered, and it was their mission to draft what became eventually the Federal Reserve Act. And I see you're going to show the pictures there, yeah. Those are the guys. And the funny thing about that piece of history is that the Federal Reserve bill was being sold to the American people at that time as a piece of legislation that was going to somehow control those big bad bankers. You see? And what they didn't realize is that the big bad bankers that you're looking at right there, those are the epitome of the great power centers of banking. They were the ones that were busy writing the bill that was supposed to control.
Who are these 6 gentlemen, Mr. Griffin?
Well, they're representatives.
You could walk us through them.
Primarily, Senator Aldridge is the only one who wasn't a banker. He was the politician. He was the one that was sort of spearheading the political side of it.
But father-in-law also to John Rockefeller.
John Rockefeller, yeah. He was tied in very closely to the banking fraternity and the industrial complex. A very wealthy guy in his own right. Probably the most important political figure in the United States, short of the president, who was Woodrow Wilson in those days. But the rest of these guys are all bankers, and they represented the dynasties of J.P. Morgan and William and the Rockefeller dynasty, and they had connections to Kuhn Loeb and Company that were there. And that means they were connected to the Rothschilds in England and France, and Max Warburg was there. I mean, Paul Warburg was there, and he had connection to his brother Max, who was the head of the banking, the Warburg Banking Consortium in Germany and the Netherlands. And so what we have is this was an international group here, really, representing international finance. And if there was anything that was the epitome of the big bad bankers of the world, these were the guys. So what happened there is that they knew that there was going to be some kind of a move to control banking. They knew that Congress was going to pass some kind of a law to regulate banking. And so instead of being stupid about it and just sitting back and saying, oh, I hope they don't do too bad, they decided to take the lead. They said, we'll write the bill. We'll make sure that it's to our liking. And so that's what it's all about. They went to Jekyll Island where nobody knew they were going, where they had a meeting that was in a great deal of secrecy. They denied that they went for many years thereafter, But they actually drafted the Federal Reserve Act on Jekyll Island in 1910. And then the next 3 years, it took that much time to promote it and get it through Congress.
All right, so there's that. But this is the best part, folks. Because this, I want to make sure I said, is everyone paying attention yet? And this is a quote: "Let me issue and control a nation's money, and I care not who writes the laws." Mayor Amschel Rothschild. Now, make no mistake, folks. Everything you're watching about the Ripple, about the SEC versus Ripple, and trying to call XRP a security, what you're seeing with Ethereum and the Bitcoin and Ethereum free pass, everything you're watching are power struggles in what will be Federal Reserve 2.0. Make no mistake, this has everything to do with that XRP escrow. And it also has to do, in my opinion, with the guys at Ripple and the guys at Brad Garlinghouse, Chris Larson, and Ripple paying the toll to the powers that be. It has everything to do with these things, folks. But this is a literal financial war that's being waged in this whole thing. Make no mistake about it. What you're about to watch, the first part is that same guy that wrote the creature from Jekyll Island. His name is Edward. Is it C. Edward Griffin? I can't remember. Maybe it's just Edward Griffin. But anyway, he wrote that book. It's well worth the read. Go get it. But the second part of this, folks. Remember that video I found of Charles Gasparino when he was talking to the guys that were running the Brooklyn Project, which was a consensus project? Remember the clip of him on Fox Business in 2018? It was in May of 2018, the month before the Bill Hinman speech. When you put them side by side, watch what you get.
While the bill was being debated in Congress, some of these people went before the public. They gave speeches knowing it would be reported in the press, and they were interviewed by journalists, and they said, oh, this bill that they had written on the side, nobody knew of it, this bill is not going to be good for business, it's bad for America. And they actually did that ploy. And knowing full well that the average guy would read that in the newspaper and say, these big bankers don't like the bill. Must be pretty good, These fellas were...
Does that sound familiar, by the way? Does that sound familiar? Think about all the bad things that all these people were saying about crypto for the years. Almost as if they're saying it Remember, Bitcoin came out in the code. Was written something that made it look, and I do mean made it look like a libertarian movement. They wrote something about the bailouts in the code. And then for the next, I'm telling you, write it down, Bitcoin, they wanted to usher people into Bitcoin. And then for years, oh, this is for bad guys, this is crypto's rat poison, all this stuff. These people are smart. They knew that by saying all these things and making it look like a libertarian thing, the people would go into it. I'm telling you. All right, keep watching.
And that's how they sold it.
Well, you asked the question in your book, the Creature from Jekyll Island, what is the Federal Reserve?
And while I'm thinking about it, folks, this is the same thing that's going to be done with this metaverse thing. I've said it on this channel, and that this will be the theme of this channel. There's going to be a lot of money made on not just crypto, but on metaverse, and it'll be, metaverse, NFTs, whatever. There's going to be a ton of money made on those things. But these people are smart that are creating this. The money, I'm telling you, this is what I will be doing. The money that is made on all this stuff, from my point of view, the smart play is, and I'm no financial advisor, I'm just telling you what I do. I will be putting the money made back into real world hard assets like paid for real estate, gold, silver, these types of things. Because I'm telling you, this is all by design. Now, I didn't want to get off of the point of what they're doing from a regulatory perspective. I'm going to shut up now on this, but as you listen to the rest of this, listen to what he says, the term self-regulatory organization. Remember that term as you watch it.
What is your answer?
Well, what it is, it's a cartel. It's not a government agency. It has the appearance of it being a government agency, and they went to great lengths to give it that facade. It does have the power of government because Congress voted to give the power of enforcement to it. But in its essence, underneath it, it's a cartel. It's nothing different than a banana cartel or an oil cartel or sugar cartel. It happens to be a banking cartel. They got together, they drew up the rules and regulations for their own industry. To self-regulate their own industry is what cartels do. And then they sent it to Congress, and they took off the label at the top that said banking cartel, and they erased that, and they said Federal Reserve Act. Congress passed it into law, and that's why we think it's a government agency, is because if you don't obey the rules that they set down for their own industry, you go to prison. And so it looks like a government agency. But basically the answer to your question is it's a banking cartel.
But here's what we understand, which is interesting. This self-regulatory agency could be put through, and I think this is the biggest effort yet, where they have major white shoe law firms they've hired, something known as the Brooklyn Project. They're going to publish best practices and seek government regulation at some point as an SRO, as something along the lines of the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ. And it's created by two, I would say, industry leaders, a guy named Joe Lubin, Andrew Keys. They are part of something known as Ethereum and Consensus. These are big cryptocurrency blockchain companies. They are working on this through this thing known as the Brooklyn Project. They have a lot of sources and friends on Wall Street. This, to me, will be the way that cryptocurrency and blockchain, the technology, gets beyond the sewage rationale. They are going to lead the effort to essentially systematize and rationalize and create a consumer protection organization with blockchain and cryptocurrency, and this is the key thing, because they are working, from what I understand, with the SEC, the CFTC on this, a self-regulatory organization, which will differentiate between stuff that can be regulated as securities, like Bitcoin, and other stuff that you have through blockchain, like computer technology.
So enjoy your day, everybody. I'm always here for you. Leave any comments or questions below, and be sure to subscribe. But thanks, everybody. I really appreciate you. Enjoy your day, and I always have your back. So thanks so much, everybody.